Tesla's stock price up $33 in the first half of the day. And the question is why? The main reason is an analyst at Newmark gave it an upgrade. And we're going to review the details of why this upgrade occurred and what impact it might have on other analysts. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We sometimes do sort of a midday update to our show, especially when the stock price of Tesla is moving in this fashion. And we just finished doing a show on Tesla potentially going thermonuclear. And I believe that this is the start of, that thermonuclear process. Just wanted to remind you, we want to thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So I also wanted to thank all of you for saying hello. We'll say hello to you at the end of the show and look forward to your questions at about the 15-minute mark that we can respond to. So I wanted to review the fact that as we were doing our show early morning, we kind of forecasted that we were heading into the thermonuclear zone. And the reason primarily is that one of the analysts from Oppenheimer suggested his 612 price target was out there, and he expected there to be a number of $700 price targets that were issued. So with that kind of being the trend, this is why we felt that, that $600 price target was pretty much doable. And so I wanted to sort of run you guys through what his logic is, what we think of the logic. So basically, an analyst at New Market came out with a price target of $800 for Tesla's stock price. So the basis for this was that by 2025, they see Tesla doing between 2 and 3 million vehicles. And if you look at the revenue implications of that, that validates a stock price in the range of $1,700 in the latter part of 2021. And it's in line with getting it done now for something in that range of $800 a share, which is sort of discounted off of the destination they think the stock will take over the next 3 years, and then kind of, budgeting backwards for that. There's an outside chance. I mean, it's low, but there's a decent possibility, let's call it 10%, 10 to 15% chance that Tesla will actually do 1 million vehicles this year. And the reason is that if China can get into that 300,000 to 400,000 vehicle range, and the growth of the U.S. production rises both in cars and perhaps the semi, we could easily eclipse the million vehicles sold. But because of the semi, you might have to call that 3 extra vehicles because it's over $200,000 per. So his thesis, again, is 2 million to 3 million vehicles by 2025. We think Tesla, Germany is obviously going to get built. So it's our belief that it's possible that Tesla is at 1.5, almost 2 million vehicles in 2021. So his target for the number of vehicles sold, something like 2.5 million, in theory, could be achieved by the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. So therefore, you kind of see where the stock price goes as a result. There's a bunch of numbers that we're watching to see what happens, but the biggest number for us is the fact that in the China market, 25% of the vehicles that are sold there out of 25 million, let's say, is the price segment that Tesla competes in. And so there's the case in China this year for, if they could make it, 600,000 vehicles. But basically, as Tesla spreads out and takes sales away from OEM, primarily from Europe, you could definitely see a circumstance where Tesla's doing, the Chinese, at any rate, want Tesla to do something like 3 or 4 million vehicles in 2025 just in China. So if you extrapolate the fact that China can do 3 million vehicles, and then think about the fact that in theory you should sort of double your global production out of the United States, this is totaling up at like 6 million vehicles in that 2025 time frame, because everybody else would sort of double what China's doing is kind of the concept. So all this said, I think that the valuation that he's presented is quite reasonable, and therefore I think that you could definitely see analysts within the large firms sort of embrace this and push the stock further, especially now that they have between $600 and $800 headroom to do so. Don't forget, we also have what I call our 3-day rule, where this report is being issued to the large mutuals and other money managers, and they're going to have a chance to weigh in by purchasing stock after they've had a chance to carefully review the calculations over the next 2 or 3 days. So I think the numbers are way on the low side of what Tesla's going to do, but at this point, I think the logic is sound, and therefore there's good reasons to go ahead and say, yeah, this can happen. I also find this sort of analysis rather interesting. In this case, the analyst chose to reference number of vehicles sold, profit margins, higher than industry, as well as, and so how that all comes together in order to get their conclusions. In the case of Morgan Stanley, which just put in its downgrade, it was highlighted that Morgan Stanley just made the statement that the stock price seemed a little high based on how it had run previously, and they really didn't take any time to actually go through the fundamental analysis of what the potential profit and revenue might look like. So this sort of puts us in an interesting position, because you have the lesser firms being more focused on sort of bottom-up analytics that drive a stock price, and you have the higher line firms like a Morgan Stanley sitting there and just throwing out downgrades without any sound basis for presenting the downgrade. So that sort of activity for us sounds a little bit shaky, because you're paying these guys a lot of money for their thought process, and to not have any thought process and just have someone come out and say, the stock price has run a great deal, we're going to downgrade it. I think, I think it shows poorly for the firm that they belong to. So, so given that we're targeting like 6 million vehicles in 2025, and we expect that China will announce a new factory next year to drive bigger numbers for the following year, which would be 2022. So, the other note that we have is that we forecast China, based on demand, will start a new factory sometime this year, which obviously would bring in new vehicle sales in 2021 as well. So obviously keep your eye peeled on sort of what's going on with this, because if you're interested in what's happening with the stock price, there's a lot of data points that are coming up. So where do we go from here? I think the answer is, number one, I think institutions now are being validated with above $500 buys in large amounts on the stock. And now someplace between 6 and 700 or 6 and 800 has become sort of in the reasonable zone for well-researched firms to go ahead and do purchases. According to Mr. Roust at Oppenheimer, there are a few other firms that are preparing to offer up $700 price targets for Tesla in the near term, sometime in the next month or so, is the impression we got from him. So if in fact we're going to have analysts moving down this road towards fundamental analysis that supports above $600 price targets for the stock based on the quality of execution of Tesla, we could see a nice little run on the stock. And then if you taper on a little bit of, short covering there, you could easily see the stock bounce into the 600s and possibly into the 700s sometime over the next couple of weeks as Tesla brings in its earnings. So we actually, sort of wanted to do our new time coverage, because anytime the stock moves dramatically, it's pretty awesome to be a part of the conversation as it's happening versus sort of wait it out at the end, calling it before and being sort of involved. I I'd have to say that basically the way things have been going, and we think there's a payoffs going on by the hedge funds to get these downgrades. We're kind of expecting at least one or two downgrades to come with perhaps two or three more upgrades before earnings is announced. So what that will probably do then is, as you can see with the Morgan Stanley downgrade, the stock was where it is now about 540. Analyst downgrades from Morgan Stanley brought down to as low as 499 and then back up to about 510. So we're kind of anticipating something happening where if there's no new downgrade for Tesla, given the $800 price target, you could see in about 3 days the funds start buying the stock more where it is, pushing up into the late 500s, maybe early 600s. And if there is a downgrade, we expect to sort of go through this cycle once again where whoever makes the latest statement has the biggest push on the stock price, either up or down. And I believe that the hedge funds have so much money to lose that they need to pay a few folks to, give them a downgrade so that they can get a lower stock price as a way to get out of it before these earnings are announced, because I just think there's too much good news lurking in the earnings, and even a slight hiccup by Tesla between now and then will result in a very high stock price and a lot of pain for those who do not get out of it in the short community. So we're very much looking forward to seeing how this plays out. We're definitely interested in what you guys might have to say. Do not be surprised if there aren't any Tesla surprises that influence everything. For example, if in fact we start having, let's say 5 to 10,000 trucks a month being produced, which is, call it 2,000 vehicles a week, that's actually a possibility. All the revenue and profit that lurks from those trucks aren't being baked into anybody's analysis. So if in fact the truck is announced at the end of the month to be delivered shortly thereafter, or in the April timeframe that we described, all the numbers from that are not being baked in because of how long Tesla is delayed introducing those vehicles. So it's entirely possible that what we're saying is the numbers that are driving a $2,000 stock price in the sense of this analyst that just reported could actually be achieved by the end of next year, which obviously brings the valuation up into the direction that was just described. So I think that, all of this is good news for Tesla. Congratulations that we actually have some real analysis done rather than just using your power to downgrade a stock for no good reason. The challenge right now, I think if you're an investor, is it might be a good idea to consider looking at some options to protect gains that you're achieving, because you want to stay in and retain your earnings on stock. But at the same time, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of insurance in case something crazy happens and drops the stock price suddenly, which might put, your plans in disarray for a few months, maybe or so. But I'm intrigued to watch, as we described, how changes in statements that are going into those models could all of a sudden have a huge impact on the stock price very quickly in a very short period of time. So in light of what was discussed here regarding the $800 stock price that's currently targeted for Tesla, I think that we can see now why we put a $1,000 target out there for June of 2020. And the basis of that is, number one, if we have the execution follow through on all the vehicles that are up on the table. Number two, we'll have the third quarter heading into the fourth quarter of profitability that's required to get Tesla into the S&P. And then once we're S&P eligible, you're going to see Tesla stock price move something like 10-20% to basically fit properly. This is sort of short, given that we've already covered a lot of the ground we just described. Pamela just made a comment about the fact that SpaceX just had a nice launch, and that Boeing is not showing effectiveness as SpaceX is. We would agree with this. And speaking of SpaceX, we'll be sending letters out to you guys in the next few days regarding our due diligence trip to SpaceX as well. Any rate, and we finally have our email working at Teslafaninsight.com, so you can drop us a note there if there's any interest in learning more. There is a cost, so you can determine if that's something you might be interested in as well. Any rate, I don't want to drag out our show here if we don't have anything to say. Happy to field questions if anyone might have any for us. But it is I think a good news day for Tesla. And we're hopeful that more analysts will sort of get on the side of good analysis rather than just, Tesla bashing with no basis for it. Any rate, this is wanted to review our health tips. Don't forget 25 legless a day. And also, you might want to try fruit instead of just juices with high sugar concentrations. There's a Jamaican that did a Wagwan comment there. Thanks for the comment there. I think that's funny. The other elements we'd recommend is don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4. Let the food digest so it doesn't cause other health issues. And I'm going to sort of leave my health list to that for the day. As you know, we have a lot of other items in our list, but we'll stick with that for today. Any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks for all the hellos and compliments that you guys have given. I wanted to say tschüss in German, au revoir, French, Litrot, Hebrew, Hoda Hafez, Farsi, enough respect, brethren, is what we say in Jamaica. Zdravstvuyte, Russian, Ni hao ma, Chinese, Hejdo, Swedish, and Do widzenia. I need to get some African languages in there, and I just didn't learn anything in school, but there's hope. Any rate, thanks once again for joining us. Have a great day. Bye for now. We look forward to your after show comments at the bottom. And don't forget to like and subscribe.